We will have a guest today, Lola Castro, Regional Director of the World Food Program. She will be here to speak to you. She'll be here on the internet to speak to you on Haiti. Then at 1:15 or thereafter, we'll have a hybrid briefing by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan, who's accompanied by a high-level parliamentary delegation. They will brief you on recent developments in Southeast Asia. Sorry? South Asia, yes, thank you for paying attention. All right, I will get to situation in Gaza in a bit, but I'm still waiting for some updates. But I will start off with the horrific situation and developments in Sudan. As you will have seen or heard, 5 members of a UN humanitarian convoy were killed last night, and several more were injured during an attack near Koma in North Darfur. I can tell you that we, of course, condemn in the strongest possible terms this horrendous act of violence against humanitarian personnel who literally put their lives at risk in an attempt to reach vulnerable children and families in the famine-impacted areas of Sudan. This joint WFP-UNICEF convoy was made up of 15 trucks, and it had traveled over 1,800 kilometers from Port Sudan, and they were carrying nutrition supplies and food. The agencies were negotiating access to complete the journey to El Fasher when it was attacked. The route that the convoy was going to take was shared in advance with the parties on the ground who were notified and aware of the location of the trucks. Multiple of our trucks were burnt in the attack and critical humanitarian supplies were damaged. This is devastating that the supplies have not reached the civilians in need. This was the first UN humanitarian convoy that was going to make it to El Fasher in over 1 year. All attacks on humanitarian personnel, on their facilities and vehicles must stop. These are violations under international humanitarian law, and we call for an urgent investigation and for the perpetrators to be held to account. We call for safe, secure, and the best possible operating conditions for international humanitarian law to be respected by all parties, and not just in Sudan, but in all conflict-impacted countries. Under international humanitarian law, aid convoys must be protected, and parties have an obligation to allow and facilitate rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for civilians in need. And for those who were killed in the line of duty in Sudan, we of course extend our condolences to their families and loved ones, and we wish a speedy recovery to those who were wounded in the attack. I have some comments on the situation regarding the International Commission Against Impunity that was, as you will recall, active in Guatemala. The Secretary General is concerned about the announcement by the Public Prosecutor's Office of Guatemala regarding the issuance of arrest warrants against former Commissioner of the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala, Ivan Velasquez, and the former head of investigations, Luis Adriana Camargo, who is now Colombia's Attorney General. They, along with 24 other former members of the Commission's national staff and independent justice officials who collaborated with the Commission. The Secretary General reiterates that the Commission's international personnel, under terms of the agreement between the United Nations and the government of Guatemala regarding the establishment of the Commission, enjoys impunity from legal process with respects to acts done in the performance of their mission, which continues even after the completion of their employment with the Commission. The Secretary General recalls that under this agreement, the government of Guatemala agreed to protect the personnel of the Commission, whether international staff or national staff, and to protect them from abuse, threats, reprisals, or acts of intimidation in virtue of their work with the Commission. The Secretary General reiterates his concern that the numerous reports that criminal prosecutions is being carried out against those who sought to shed light on cases of corruption and work to strengthen the rule of law and the justice system in Guatemala. And today, the Secretary General addressed the 9th Austrian World Summit via video message. He pointed out that we face a triple whammy of woe with pollution, clogging rivers, contaminating land, and poisoning our ocean. The biodiversity being destroyed at a record pace and record levels of greenhouse gases catastrophically disrupting our climate. The Secretary General warned that no country, whether rich or poor, can escape these crises. No country can solve them alone. But together, he said, we can reap the rewards of action, from cheap, secure power to better health. His message is available online. And also on climate, our High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, delivered a lecture at Oxford University calling for a new approach to politics in response to the climate emergency. Mr. Turk is expected to say that humanity is in denial about the fundamental fact that our well-being and survival are inseparable from the health of our planet and our environment. The High Commissioner for Human Rights will call for a global movement for change, guided by human rights and the rights of nature, with bold action to deliver climate justice and transform governance for the common good. His remarks will be online on the website of the UN Human Rights Office as soon as they're delivered. Meanwhile, our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is in Geneva, Switzerland, for the 8th session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction 2025. At the opening of the meeting, she stressed that disaster risk reduction is essential to protect lives and advance sustainable development goals, and must go hand in hand with climate action. The Deputy Secretary General highlighted the recent glacier collapse in Blatten, Switzerland, as a stark reminder of the growing climate-related risks we face and the power of early warning in sparing lives. She called for bold investments to make these life-saving systems accessible to all, especially the most vulnerable. While in Geneva, she also held meetings with the Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction, Kamal Kishore, as well as other senior UN officials, representatives of the Swiss government, and heads of delegation attending the meeting. We expect her back here tomorrow. And just to bring up Gaza, as I said I would, and I can tell you that once again we are witnessing unthinkable loss of life in Gaza. The Secretary General condemns the loss of lives and injuries of Palestinians seeking aid in Gaza. It is unacceptable. Civilians are risking, and in several instances, losing their lives just trying to get food. Palestinians have the fundamental right to adequate food and to be free from hunger. The Secretary General continues to call for an immediate and independent investigation into these events and for the perpetrators to be held to account. The basic needs of the population in Gaza are enormous and are not being met. Israel has clear obligations under international humanitarian law to agree to and facilitate humanitarian relief for all civilians who need it. The unimpeded entry of humanitarian assistance at scale must be restored immediately. The UN must be allowed to work in safety and in security under conditions of full respect for humanitarian principles. All hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. The Secretary General continues to call for an immediate, permanent, and sustainable ceasefire. Meanwhile, on the ground, our colleagues tell us that there is a sharp rise in child labor, in early marriage, and family separation. This is all driven by hunger, by displacement, and by economic turmoil. Children are increasingly exposed to violence and exploitation during chaotic distributions of basic supplies, including in crowds when people take flour directly from trucks, and children with disabilities are often the worst affected. In Khan Yunis, a safe place for women and girls had to suspend its services in recent days after the area was placed under a displacement order. Our partners tell us that as a result, about 1,000 women and girls have lost access to essential support, including for services for survivors of gender-based violence, psychosocial care, and help with referrals. OCHA says that just yesterday, Israeli authorities issued another displacement order, this time covering 4 neighborhoods in Khan Yunis, where about 45,000 people were sought to be staying. Meanwhile, we and our humanitarian partners are making the most of the limited openings that began last month after nearly 80 days of a complete blockade. But as we've said before, what's coming in, and if it does come in, is just a trickle and does not meet the immense needs on the ground. We have enough supplies lined up and ready to go close to Gaza, but only limited amounts are actually reaching the people who need them. and that's because of the conditions on the ground. Specifically, OCHA warns that bottlenecks at the Karim Shalom crossing, which is, you will recall, the only crossing that the Israeli authorities are allowing for aid to come into Gaza. Since May 17th, only half of the pre-cleared supply submitted for a second and final Israeli clearance has made it through the Palestinian side. In total, we and our partners submitted over 1,200 pre-cleared truckloads for final Israeli clearance, a process referred to as manifesting. More than 80% of those were approved. Fewer than 80% of those were approved and sent from warehouses in Israel. That's over 940 truckloads. After ongoing scanning, offloading, reloading, and being shuttled forward, just over 620 truckloads have made it to the Palestinian side. You will recall that we don't have visibility over that part of the pipeline. This is because Israeli authorities have not allowed us to deploy monitors at the crossing. Of the supplies scanned in Karim Shalom, our teams have managed to collect about 370 truckloads and bring them closer to where people need them, which is inside Gaza. That includes food, mainly flour, as well as medical and nutrition supplies. OCHA reminds us that access to both sides of Karim Shalom is tightly controlled by Israeli security authorities. Inside Gaza, any movement to or from the crossing required driving through a militarized zone where the bombings are continuing. Our teams must remain flexible to avoid areas where looting is likely, but they have so far been expected to only follow routes that are approved by Israeli authorities. Our humanitarian movements that require coordination with Israeli authorities continue to be denied across the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, 10 of 13 attempts to coordinate such movements were rejected. Those included collection of supplies from Karim Shalom, but also life-saving operations such as trucking water to North Gaza or relocating fuel stocks to where they are needed. Moving to Syria, because it's been a while since we've updated you on the situation there. We and our partners are continuing to deliver aid across the country despite a severe funding environment, reaching nearly 2.5 million people per month. Since the beginning of the year, 1,185 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies have crossed from Turkey into Syria. This is 6 times higher than the number during the same period last year. In May, the assistance benefited more than 1 million people in Syria. Meanwhile, our humanitarian colleagues say that nearly 16 million people need urgent humanitarian health support. Syria's health system remains under severe strain. Essential medicines are limited, treatment costs are out of reach for many families, and overcrowded shelters increase the risk of disease outbreaks. Furthermore, our colleagues at OCHA tell us that explosive remnants of war and unexploded ordnance continue to threaten safety of civilians across Syria. Since December 8th of last year, 1,000 casualties have been reported, which includes 400 deaths and 600 injuries. Children represent over 1/3 of those casualties. Humanitarian community is calling for urgent support to expand risk education, professional clearance operations, and assistance for survivors. And just as a reminder that the Syrian humanitarian response plan requires $2 billion until the end of June to support 8 million people in need, but to date it's received only 11%, which means we have 219 United States dollars in the bank. Turning to Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that airstrikes and hostilities over the last 24 hours caused several civilian casualties across Ukraine, including children, as well as extensive damage to homes and civilian infrastructure. That's what local authorities are telling our colleagues on the ground. Regions of Sumy, Chernihiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and Kherson were impacted by the attacks. Humanitarian organizations are mobilized and providing support, including hot meals, construction materials, and psychological support. In Izium, in the Kharkiv region, a strike damaged an international NGO warehouse storing food kits from WFP. No aid workers were injured, but the strike destroyed humanitarian supplies and damaged some vehicles. And I can tell you that our colleagues at the UN mission in South Sudan are deeply concerned about escalating intercommunal violence in Tonj East and Warab State, and urge the government to intervene to deploy security services to address the situation. The violence over the past few days driven by attempts to recover stolen cattle and revenge for the previous loss of lives, resulted in more than 80 casualties. The mission, the numbers have yet to be verified. The mission is intensively engaging with state and local authorities to calm the situation and has increased its peacekeeping patrols. However, peacekeepers are experiencing significant challenges reaching some of the most impacted areas due to the proliferation of checkpoints manned by armed youth. South Sudan cannot afford yet another crisis on top of the crises it is already facing. The country remains one of the largest displacement crises in the world. And if you don't have any plans this weekend, recommendation for you, photo exhibit titled Through Her Lens, Women Rising for Peace. It opens Saturday at Photoville Festival in Brooklyn Bridge Park. Features artwork by local women photographers in places like Abyei, Central African Republic, Haiti, Lebanon, Mozambique, occupied Palestinian territory, South Sudan, and Sudan. The exhibition spotlights peace builders, human rights defenders, peacekeepers, and grassroots activists in portraits and environments that reflect the challenges of conflict and the possibilities that emerge when women lead. It also commemorates the 25th anniversary of Security Resolution 1325, Women, Peace, and Security, and it's organized by our colleagues in the Department of Peace Operations, Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, UN Women, the LC Initiative Fund, and support from member states. A very important international day for me. Today is the is World Bicycle Day. Simple, effective, clean, and environmentally way of getting to and from work, and a little dangerous if you're in New York. Quiz for you today. This country is the smallest country in mainland Africa, just over 12,000 square kilometers. Its national drink is called the bissap and is made from the flowers of hibiscus plant. No?
South of
No. Benno's got it. I know he's got it.
yes, I was in the neighbor country.
No.
It's something with
The Gambia. Yes, the Gambia. We thank our friends in Banjul. And in all seriousness, we'll take your questions. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups. First, on the Sudan killings, were the 5 members killed, were they nationals?
They were Sudanese staff. They were Sudanese contractors working for WFP and UNICEF.
Right. And secondly, how many drivers, how many UN contractors were part of this convoy? Trying to get some sense.
There were 15 trucks. I think each truck has at least 2 people in it. I don't have the exact numbers, but there's usually a driver, a driver's assistant, and there were probably some support vehicles. So I would say more than 30. You know, beyond not that there's anything beyond the tragedy, but they were 80 kilometers from El Fasher after having traveled 1,800 kilometers for days in incredibly difficult terrain, in incredibly dangerous terrain. They were parked on the side of the road waiting for clearances, and they were attacked.
Did they have any idea who they were attacked by?
No.
We know that the RSF has been trying to take El Fasher.
It was an air attack, most likely drones, but we do not know who the perpetrators were.
And just one other thing, how many of the trucks survived, or did any of them?
I don't have I don't have that number.
And could I also ask a follow-up on the Secretary General's statement on Guatemala?
Mm-hmm.
He's concerned, but what action is he asking the authorities in Guatemala to take?
To drop all efforts to criminally charge people who had worked for the commission, whether they're international or, I mean, especially for those who are more at risk, which are the Guatemalan nationals who'd worked for the commission, who continue to be covered by the immunity even after their work has done. Any other questions left now that we've answered quite a bit? Linda.
Thank you, Steph. This is in regard to Yemen and the statement you made yesterday by the Secretary General calling for the release of the 23 UN staff and all others who are being held by the Houthis. In the statement, the SG, asks the international community, he asks NGOs, he asks member states to use their advocacy to get the release of these UN personnel. I was just wondering, has the Security Council ever asked for the release of the UN personnel being held by the Houthis? And has he asked them recently?
Well, I mean,
to
I
do
think
so?
if I'm not mistaken, and my colleagues will double check, but I do believe the Security Council has expressed itself on that. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. When the SG says that this attacks on civilians should be investigated, freely, independently investigated, whom he addressing to? Where this call going to? Who will receive that call and do the independent investigation?
Look, investigations can take multiple forms. National investigations. I mean, the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli government has admitted that they shot people today. They've claimed that it was in self-defense. The Israelis could do an investigation and held people to account. There are international mechanisms with which the parties should cooperate with. And yet again, we call on Israel to allow journalists to enter Gaza. Your next question.
My next question, you're getting used to saying Kerem Shalom only, dropping the Arabic real original name of Kerem Abi Salem. Maybe do we expect in the future the spokesperson, not you, to say Judea and Samaria?
We will continue to talk about using approved terms.
This not approved. Show me that document that instructs you, an official, to say only Kerem Shalom.
We've also talked about Karim Abu Salam. I've done it in the past. I mean,
But not anymore.
Abdelhamid, I understand where you're coming from, but I think our sentiments, our expressions of anger, our condemnations are very clear. Do you have another question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yvonne, and then...
Thanks, Steph. Can you just clarify, I'm just trying to get some clarification on the attacks at the GHF. There's one on Sunday, clearly, also yesterday and today, so 3 days in a row, is that correct?
I mean, you know as well as I do, that's the press reports we've seen. We're not there, but yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, so and what are the latest figures for the number of people who've been killed in each of those attacks?
Those numbers, I think, have been, I've seen numbers issued by the Gaza Health Ministry of around 27, but I think they may have risen.
And is it your understanding that the Israeli forces opened fire 3 days in a row?
We have seen the statements by the Israeli forces today, right, where they admitted to opening fire. Yesterday, we saw competing narratives. The point is that the system, as Philippe Lazzarini called it, is a death trap, right? The system of funneling people between barbed wires, forcing them to walk to get the food, with armed contractors who come from who knows where, with what kind of accountability, right? They're not accountable to national authorities. It is all a recipe for disaster, which is exactly what is going on. And that's why we call again on the Israeli authorities to help restart the UN system, the distribution of not just the UN, but all the partners that we've used that have the community buying. No one is saying that it was perfect, but the point is the way we operate under humanitarian principles of impartiality, of independence, of getting food to the people instead of forcing them to march to a place where food is distributed and where it increases their risk.
So just finally, are you then advising local Palestinian civilians not to approach the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation for food?
No,
and water?
The short answer is no. Who are we to tell people who are hungry not to try to get food, right? It's a human thing. We're just, our message is to the Israelis, let us restart our system, right? We'll go to Ria Novosti.
Thanks so much, Steph. Happy International Bicycle Day to you. Got a couple questions. First of all, Elon Musk has just posted, and I quote, "defund the UN." Any comments on that?
Fund the UN.
Cool. Secondly, on Russia-Ukraine. Russia has stated that Ukraine was behind the railway blasts in its border region, which caused a passenger train to derail, killing 7 people and injured more than 100 civilians. Does the Secretary General condemn
I mean,
this
we
attack?
we mourn the loss of all civilian lives in this conflict.
And can I have one more? On different topic. Presidential elections in Poland. Any comments on that?
I mean, we look forward to working with the next Polish president, and we congratulate him on his election.
No phone calls so far.
Not that I'm aware
Thank
of. Bisan and then Fatouche.
So the consulting firm that works with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation apparently has withdrawn the contract. And we already have seen so much issues surrounding the GHF and the killing of Palestinian civilians. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I mean, we're not involved with the DHF, and their dealings with Boston Consulting Group, as reported by the Washington Post, is their business. I mean, it's not for us to comment.
And one more. So there's a flotilla sailing towards Gaza with activists on it, and there has been some sort of incitement against them online, even from a sitting U.S. senator, and a spokesperson for the Israeli army just said that they are ready to face this flotilla. Do you have any comment? Because we've seen some of these flotillas being attacked in the past.
I mean, we hope that everyone on board is kept safe. Fatouche.
I was wondering if you could, giving the GHF, have you guys at all been told by Israeli counterparts that your time, given that GHF is talking about expanding their operations, that your time, the limited access you have, there's a deadline on it? Or
No, I'm not aware of a deadline being given to us on our ability to deliver teaspoon by teaspoon of aid into Gaza. Benno, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Steph. Just for the record about Gaza, do you have any doubt to question numbers of the Gaza health authorities given their influence of Hamas?
Look, we have relied on those figures. We have found throughout the years, because that they are usually in the right ballpark. Yes, sir, Azim, please.
Stéphane, Secretary General has been showing a lot of concern about India-Pakistan war and offering mediation and all that. Does he plan any action after this, today's meeting, any practical action beyond mediation offer in that dispute?
As you know, the Secretary General, in any dispute, his good officers are available should both parties want them. Yes, sir.
It's a follow-up question which Miazab asked. Actually, the main issue which Bilal Bhutto Zardari is discussing with the United Nations Secretary General is the Indus Water Treaty, the unilaterally stoppage of Pakistani water flowing towards Pakistan by the India. This is the main concern for post-war for Pakistan right now. So any comments on that, sir?
I mean, we hope that international treaties that were agreed upon are respected. Okay, Michelle Nichols, I think she's online.
She is. Of the 304 trucks that you said made it into Gaza, how many got looted?
I don't have exact numbers on that, but a number of trucks were looted. Notably, if you'll recall, while the trucks themselves were not looted, the medical supplies that were delivered to a hospital were promptly looted after delivery by armed gangs. We have also had a number of incidents of people, as I've mentioned, called it self-distributing flour that was on trucks, because we are required to use open bed trucks. But I don't have a hard number for you.
And then also, I guess, the WFP warehouse, that would be included? Sorry.
Thank you all. We'll leave you with our guest. If we can put a little on the screen, and Stéphane will walk you through that, and then we'll have the Pakistani.